The word dinosaur means terrible lizard. That's what the word means, and I believe dinosaurs were giant reptiles in the reptilian family from the pre-flood times when people were living to be 900 years old. Dr. Cabrera, should be a C, here is holding human vertebrae found with dinosaur bones in Peru. Dr. Cabrera also has a lot of interesting evidence on dinosaurs and humans living together based on the Ica stones. I have 3 in my collection in Pensacola, Florida, 3 originals. About 50,000 of these stones have been found. There are 15 in the United States. Dr. Baugh, who you mentioned, has 1. Dennis Swift has 2. These stones clearly depict dinosaurs. The footprints you're talking about from Glen Rose, Texas, I've been there 3 times. The limestone layers there are pretty interesting. When it weathered, eroded rapidly in 1908 in the flood, a 2-foot layer of limestone was peeled off and moved downstream. About 20 miles, they found the fragments that were peeled off, some pieces as big as a van. Underneath were thousands of dinosaur footprints. So they made Dinosaur Valley State Park. It is still there today. It costs $5 to get in. Well worth going to see. Go in July or August, and you're probably going to have the river dry, and you can walk in the footprints much easier. During the 30s, in the Depression, the sandbags were set up to block off part of the river. It's not a very deep river, normally a couple of feet. And they pumped out areas, and they chiseled out large blocks of tracks to save them in museums. American Museum of Natural History got a large block of tracks and built a dinosaur on top of it. Here's Tom Pendley, the famous photo of him sitting in the dinosaur footprint. Roland Byrd is the one who was in charge of excavating the tracks in 1930. He was an American Field Museum explorer. He said he saw clearly defined human footprints with the dinosaur tracks. 15 to 20-inch long human footprints. Dr. Daughtery was a chiropractor in Glen Rose for 17 years. I met him and talked to him. He spent thousands of hours measuring, documenting all this stuff on human footprints. Knowing, being a chiropractor, he understands a little bit about the biomechanics of walking, and said there are clearly human footprints. That was after his 17 years of research. I don't know if your couple days down there was equivalent to that, but there are thousands of dinosaur footprints found. They're not hard to find. Dinosaur footprints are found everywhere. Back in 1884, Earl Flint, a geologist representing the Peabody Museum, was working in a rock quarry in Nicaragua and found fossilized human tracks 16 to 24 feet below the surface. He describes the whole thing in his book here in 1884. We won't take time to read it all, but there were barefoot as well as well-defined sandal-footed impressions, supposedly over 200,000 years of age. Now, Mr. Flint is all confused because his evolutionary teaching at Harvard University has destroyed, I think, the logical thinking process where you're not allowed to think outside of the evolutionary box, as opposed to, hey, maybe these creatures made these footprints in the flood, okay? He says the sandals appear to have been designed both for comfort and protection. 1882, inmates at Carson City, Nevada found several human tracks, 18 to 20 inches long, footprints of a giant. Okay, all this is in Earl Flint's testimony here. Here's a photograph of the tracks. You can get the website omniology.com if you want more on that. These are the human tracks with the person standing here crossing a set of dinosaur tracks. The pictures are in the church over there if you want to go look at them. Dr. Daughtery is the one who took these photographs of human footprints. You need to understand there's a catch-22 situation here. We don't need to find human and dinosaur tracks together. If a few dinosaurs are still alive, that would solve the problem completely. No one has ever found human and chicken footprints in the same rock strata together. Does that prove humans and chickens did not live at the same time? No, it probably proves that humans don't normally hang out with chickens. Okay? So I don't think we need to find the footprints together, number one. Number two, I think they have been found nonetheless, okay? Texas Tracks and Artifacts is a book. It's $10, $9.95, $9.50, dealing with all the latest evidence on the human and dinosaur footprints together. I've been there myself and walked in them. That's a casting of one that I have, taken directly out of the river from Glen Rose, Texas. It's a size 24. Good size. There are people today with a size 24 shoe. That's not the big deal. I mean, it's pretty big, but the footprints have been analyzed. I think they're legitimate. The reason ICR withdrew their support, and I was with John Morris yesterday. He's a good friend of mine. I love ICR and what they do. He wrote a book called Tracking Those Incredible Dinosaurs, and then he withdrew the book from publication, or from sale, because one of the footprints that was real clearly a human footprint at first, when it was first discovered, as it eroded away, it grew 2 more toes and became a 3-toed dinosaur footprint. When the footprint was first found, it was about 8 inches deep. Oh, you're trying to, I got supposed to stand so you can get this on film. It was about 8 inches deep in the rock. as the erosion destroyed it, okay, when it was first discovered, you could actually see the dermal ridges. That's the toes equivalents of fingerprints, okay? You could see them very clearly on the toes. This was obviously a footprint. But over the first 6 months or so, this begins to erode away once it's exposed, you know. You have a catch-22 situation. If you leave the rock and the footprint where it is, it'll be destroyed by weathering. If you take it out, the skeptics will say, how do we know you got it from the river? So, you know, if you take it out and put it in a museum to preserve it, now they don't believe you. And if you leave it there, it gets destroyed and they don't believe you. Because the bottom line is, they don't want to believe. Doesn't matter what you showed them, okay? So, one of the best footprints that everybody came and witnessed, and lots of folks have testified and written affidavits saying, look, I saw this thing, okay? It was there. As it eroded away, it became a dinosaur footprint, three-toed dinosaur track. And somebody said, well, maybe the center part that you thought was a human footprint 5 years ago was actually just the pad on the bottom of a dinosaur footprint. We don't know if they had pads or not, but maybe they did. Okay. Well, another obvious explanation might be the human stepped in the same footprint after the dinosaur was there. The mud squeezed in, obscured the outer toes of the dinosaur. As it eroded away, it exposed those two toes that were there all along. So it was both footprints all along. I talked to John Morris and I said, Dr. John, why did you withdraw your support of this footprints? I've been there 3 times, I've walked in them. He said, listen, I'm not saying they're not real. And I kind of suspect they are. Dwayne Gish, one of the founders of ICR, 82-year-old, his wife died 2 weeks ago, a very good friend of mine. He writes lots of books on creation evolution. He has been there numerous times, and he and Henry Morris differ on this. Henry Morris takes the more, and John Morris take the more conservative stance and say, well, we're not really positive, we can't prove it, so let's just not mention it. Dwayne Gish says, look, I've been there, I'm convinced. So John Morris did not say, we don't believe they're legitimate. He just said we can't be positive. So he's erring on the side of caution. So it would not be correct for you to say, ICR has said they are not footprints. Don't say that. You can say they have withdrawn dogmatic support of this, but they have never said they're not human footprints, okay? And many of the people at ICR, Institute for Creation Research, still think they are indeed legitimate footprints. But my point is, it doesn't matter. We don't need to find dinosaur and human footprints together because dinosaurs have always lived with man. They were known as dragons throughout most of history. And there's probably a few still alive. In the Congo swamp, for instance, there have been many reports of dinosaurs still living in Likwala Swamp. Mr. Scotland, who was moving to Arkansas, by the way, he was in the bodybuilder contest, you know, right next to me. William Gibbons is a good friend of mine. He and I wrote a book together called Claws, Jaws, and Dinosaurs. William Gibbons has been to the Congo swamp 3 times and once to Cameroon, where there are reports of dinosaurs still living. Ever since Congo was colonized by Belgium back in 1885, there were reports of dinosaurs still living in that swamp, small ones, 15 or 20 feet long. This article, 1910, New York Herald, talks about a dinosaur still living. 1948, Saturday Evening Post. 1980, a big game hunter went there back in the early 1900s and said he saw an animal that could only fit the description of a dinosaur. There could be dinosaurs, by Ivan T. Sanderson. Okay? Roy Mackle's been there 3 times. Then they report dinosaurs called Mokele Mbembe, small ones, still alive in the swamp right now. So I think there's a fairly good amount of evidence that there could be a few stragglers still around. Eugene Thomas, missionary, was there, a friend of mine. He's in Ohio now, retired. He was for 42 years in the swamp as a missionary. He said, oh yeah, I had 2 pygmies in my church that killed one and ate it. For sake of time here, since they're giving me the 1-minute warning, I'll just try a couple of other examples. We've got plenty here. 1925, this animal washed up on the beach in California. That's the head. Here's the mouth. There's the eyeball.